fascism and about the way in which the distinct feature of early fascism was that they would not allow their opponents to have meetings. In Germany and Italy, they would try to shut down people from having a voice. So therefore, it's very interesting that today you have these fake anti-fascists doing the same thing. But I don't want to go on about them because we have much more important things to talk about. And I think it's important that we don't get distracted by the bunch of clowns that are outside. I'm learning how to speak, and I've got a manager here who's explaining that to me. But what I want you to think about is the fact that the discussion tonight on women and conservatism is very, very important. It's also a very difficult subject because the subject that we're looking at is to try to deal with the question, why is it that historically women have been much more drawn towards conservatism than men, and usually it was the men that were more left-wing, whereas today there's been a role reversal where you have far more women proportionately voting for leftist parties than men. And the question that I'm very interested in exploring is, why is that? What's really happening? I don't think there is any easy answers, which is why I'm looking forward to the discussion. But the possibility, as a sociologist, I know that there are two possible avenues that can explain this. It could be because there's something wrong or inherently wrong within conservative parties or within conservatism that puts off women or that makes it unattractive for women to be drawn towards the right-wing parties. It could be that there's something in there, and if that's the case, that is relatively easy to fix. You just basically find a way of managing that. Or alternatively, it's possible that there is something within society, within the way that social change has occurred, its feminization, the way that relationship between men and women have developed, which means that within society there are pressures and developments which leads to this distinction between the way that the different genders are behaving politically. Or it could be the combination of both, and I'm very interested in exploring why that is. I think it's important tonight that we are open-minded and don't give a final answer, but try to struggle to explain what is a very, very interesting phenomenon. Because before we can do something about this, we need to understand what the problem is. And I look forward to these four wonderful speakers here who probably have their own ideas, probably think that what I said is just completely wrong or a wrong way of looking at it. And I hope that we have an interesting discussion and a great debate. Thank you very much for coming and braving the circumstances that we're in. It's quite important that we hold firm and we don't give in to the kind of physical pressure that is directed at us, because it is important that for the sake of democracy, not just for us, that free speech and tolerance, which are actually, as it happens, foundationally liberal values, that these values, in a sense, continue to flourish. Otherwise, if free speech, which is the foundation of democracy, is undermined, then democracy itself becomes under threat and is put to question. So enjoy the discussion.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to the guest speakers for coming. I'm really honored to be with you here tonight. I'm going to introduce the speakers in the order of them speaking. They will have 5 to 7 minutes to present their case, and then I might ask 1 or 2 questions just to warm up. Through the whole discussion, please be prepared to jot down your questions or short comments, because they will be part of the discussion where we really want to hear from you. This is not just about the talking heads on the stage, and as Frank said, we want to really work on this subject and get to the bottom of it. So please prepare yourself for the questions after the main part. So first, it would be Alice Cordier speaking, president and co-founder of Collective Nemesis. Afterwards, it would be Birgit Keller, a journalist and best-selling author of Gender Gaga and other books on feminism and gender politics, chairwoman of women's NGO Frau Familie Freiheit. And afterwards, it would be Aleksandra Rybinska, journalist, political scientist, commentator, and she also works and writes for Wsieci, one of the major Polish conservative weekly magazines. And last but not least, Barbara Bonte, MEP from Vlaams-Belang, from Patriots for Europe group. So in the order of speaking, I give the floor to Alice. Thank you.
So you listen to me, it's okay? I would like to warmly thank MCC for welcoming me today to speak about a topic that has obsessed humanity since the dawn of time, especially you gentlemen, how to seduce women. All jokes aside, this is a real challenge conservatives must address today. An IFOP poll for the presidential elections of 2027 shows that among people under 25, women tend to vote much more to the left than men, with a polling gap of 9 points. More and more young women are aligning with far-left ideology, LGBT lobbies, transgenderists, support for immigration, and wearing the hijab. This is a reality we must not turn away from if we want to find real solutions. In fact, in 19th century France, it was the left that initially opposed women's rights to vote. Conservative women like Marguerite de Witt were among the first to advocate for women's suffrage and to organize mock elections. The far left fiercely opposed it, believing women were too conservative and would boost the conservative vote. We were ahead of our time when it came to women's rights. We must become so again. Today, conservatives are not addressing all the concerns of modern women. There is a huge opportunity here. In France, the masks are coming off, and we are seeing that far-left parties put their political agendas ahead of women's concerns. La France Insoumise, for example, has shielded some of these MPs accused of domestic violence. Far-left activists are incapable of denouncing the Cologne mass assaults, the grooming guns in the UK, or the overrepresentation of violence committed by migrants, even as these events become increasingly visible and publicized. In Germany, Afghans are 64 times more represented in gang rapes than Germans. 64 times. In France, 63% of sexual assaults in public transport in Paris are committed by foreigners. Yet, progressive feminists remain silent, even as the truth becomes undeniable. Their silence erodes their credibility every time a young European girl is raped, and we are the only ones speaking out. We are the voice of these women. However, we are beginning to realize that this is not enough. The conservative movement has failed to take seriously the inequalities women face. These inequalities are real, but because the left constantly weaponizes them, the right often rejects them outright, calling them elite leftist invention. This is false. There is a real precariousness among women. Domestic violence is rising, especially visible during COVID, when such violence increased by 40%. Yes, there are more and more single mothers, and it's not always due to immigration or the breakdown of the family structure caused by the left. Some women are genuinely trapped in violent relationships. Yes, there are women who want fulfilling careers, not just for financial reasons, and who find today's system incompatible with family life. To deny these issues is to abandon women in distress, and isn't the measure of a society who it treats its most vulnerable. Conservatives must rethink their priorities without betraying their values. We are conservatives, we protect the vulnerable. We should be the ones protecting women in precarious situations. We must create shelters and safe space. We must demand stricter justice to fight domestic abuse. We must tell career-driven women, yes, in our world, you can keep working a job you love and also fulfill your desire for children. We will support you with nannies, financial aid and tax relief, as Hungary does. In Turin, for example, in Italy, the region creates a fund to support pregnant women in need throughout pregnancy and childbirth, so that money is no longer an obstacle to motherhood. We are the camp of protection and safety. Today in France, a rapid can refuse to take an HIV test for SIDA, forcing the victim to undergo testing. That's outrageous. The National Rally has proposed legislation to change that. The conservative movement must now acknowledge that progressive has no limits. It enables surrogacy that turns women into breeding machines, on sales OnlyFans as a form of empowerment. We have a clear path forward. Let me now speak to the need for a right-wing feminism. Let's not be afraid of the word. We are the new feminists. Not feminists who hunt men and see them as predators, but feminists of freedom and dignity. We are in a war of words, and we must create our own concept to resonate with younger generations. Let me briefly talk about my association. We are a small group founded in October 2019, born out of anger. Anger at being treated like meat on the street. Anger at enduring assaults no one talks about. Anger at not being the right kind of victim because our attackers were immigrants. We started with 7 activists. Today we are 450 women. We began with no media contact. Now we reach millions of viewers every month and regularly appear on the TV. Our Twitter account was suspended just months after launch in 2019. Today we have passed 100,000 followers. Thank you, Elon Musk. We were ostracized by the political world, even the right. Today we are invited everywhere and hundreds attend our events. No, I don't count the Antifa protesters outside. We have faced pressure, bank account closures, Instagram suspensions, Antifa violence, left-wing media doxing our activist identities and workplace, university bans. And yet, today we represent millions of women across Europe who finally feel heard and represented. The key to our success, we don't lie to women. We tell the truth, we acknowledge both the violence linked to immigration and the failures of our own institutions to protect French European women. So let's become feminists of common sense, of reality, and we will seduce women.
Thank you very much. Thank you, great. Birgit?
Yes, thank you for inviting me, and I just realized I have very different points to mention, but I think this is nice for the discussions later. So let's ask a question: why does conservatism seem unattractive to a young generation of women? The answer is quite simple: because conservatives have failed to formulate their own positive vision of how women can live in the 21st century. Instead, the conservative camp and a lot of conservative MPs are also following the ideas of the left and believe that all it needs to do is to embrace the demands of left-wing feminism, and young women will then suddenly turn to conservatism. This is wrong for several reasons, and I would just like to mention 4 of these reasons. Number 1 is the left-wing feminism side also has no solution to this day because it's still trying to liberate women only in the labor market. They want to free them from men, but also from children, so that in the end they lead the same gender-neutral and exchangeable life as men. But what is feminine about women now following male life paths? Left-wing feminism is not saving women, it is abolishing them. And the trans movement is the logical consequence of this. Second reason, the left-wing feminism has no solution for motherhood. Motherhood cannot be deconstructed. It cannot be divided 50-50 by women's quotas. But biology is very intolerant in these matters. The answer of the left is the right to abortion. The conservatives' answer is that they have no answer. They are actually against abortion and in favor of traditional family, but they themselves have no idea how to live a modern life as a woman without giving up the positive achievements of emancipation. No woman in her right mind wants to go back to times when she had no education, no money of her own, and no rights. But conservatism fails to address the question on how motherhood can be lived without the risk of poverty and with a good education and career. The response of young women in this time is now that they don't get children anymore. And with the rise in employment, the birth rates go down. The third reason why what we have is not the solution. Left-wing feminism claims that you can have it all, a career and a family, and both at the same time. This is just wrong. But also is it unfair to mothers, because you can have a part-time job, but you cannot have part-time motherhood. Our society tells now young women that it is possible to do so. Years ago, you may remember Sheryl Sandberg urged us women just to lean in and implying that we should just make more of an effort and then we will succeed. Years ago, I remember the business magazine Bloomberg Weekly had the cover story titled, "Freeze your eggs, free your career." That's the answer of the modern society. So women are supposed to freeze their eggs in order to pursue a career and then pay a high price later to get artificial insemination at the age of 45 or older. This is not a solution, but this is cynicism. And the fourth reason, everything that is propagated today as emancipated women's life and feminist politics is nothing more than continued socialism and communism, and should be rejected as a solution for the future of women already for that reason only. I would like to read just two quotes to illustrate this. The idea that women belong to the labor market and children in daycare is not modern women's politics. It can already be found in Bukharin's ABC of Communism, an explanation of the program of the Russian Communist Party from 1920. On the question of women and children, it states in this book not only that society should educate children, and this is the right future model, but also that this is not necessary only for the educational reasons, but also for, I quote, "Social education brings enormous economic advantages. Hundreds, thousands, millions of mothers will be freed for production and for their own cultural development and through the realization of social education. They will be freed from the mind-numbing housework and the endless numbers of petty tasks associated with raising children at home." And the second quote is from 1976, from the French feminist icon Simone de Beauvoir. She incorporated this communist way of thinking into the feminist matrix in a radicalized form. And she demanded, and I quote her now, "No woman should have the right to stay at home to raise her children. Women should not have this choice, because if this choice exists, too many women will choose it." So these are only 4 reasons why the current political proposal for a modern and happy life as a woman does just not work out. They all follow the idea of men and women are interchangeable. It follows communism and social utopias. It denies motherhood. as not only a legitimate but also a socially necessary and normal part of women's lives. And the whole thing leads to demographic decline. So why do almost all conservatives in politics still follow these ideas instead of finally defining their own proposals with confidence in public? In the year 2025, spending time on children and family means a career setback, financial risk, and poverty when you're old. Anyone who wants to know why conservative family images are not sexy for young women will find the answers here. We need to offer solutions. But one part of the truth is also women choose often still the easy way, because the bitter truth of women is also conservative women tend to start families. They don't go to politics. They don't start political careers or parties. Climbing up this hard way is easier on the left side. It's easier to go with the zeitgeist. It's easier to benefit from quotes or to skip competition with men. So on the right, reality bites harder, so young women tend, at the moment, to go the easy left-wing way. So being conservative means taking personal responsibility for your life and for your success. Women more often choose the easy path. They avoid competition and prefer a state that takes care of them instead of using their freedom. They switch from being raised by their fathers to being raised by the state. But in reality, they remain stuck in the state of paternalism because it's easier than taking personal responsibility. Okay.
Thank you. That was quite comprehensive and a lot to unpack later on. Thank you. Now, Alexandra.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I have to honestly say that although I'm a woman, I never spent much time thinking about what a conservative woman is. So I decided to start the exercise by looking into the main liberal newspaper, left liberal newspaper in Poland, called Gazeta Wyborcza, some of you might know it, and to see what their image of women is like, and to see the headlines, articles about women. So I love my son, but I made a mistake becoming a mother. I feel as if part of me died. This is article number 1. It's just the last couple of weeks. When my husband had to go back to work, I closed the door behind him and cried for weeks. Should I give birth to a child in a world that is condemned to destruction? I'm 30 years old and I decided to sterilize myself. What can I give a child in this unstable world? The pain and the loneliness of mothers. I heard from women that they feel treated like an incubator. And then there's a second faucet to this. Then we come to prostitution. It's work like any other. I would really love if people just accepted me. Sex work in Warsaw. I don't kill, I don't steal, I don't have anything to be ashamed of. My friends, the prostitutes. So the liberal view of women very clearly oscillates between a dramatic vision of motherhood that robbed women of everything, and on the other side, a promotion of hedonism and even prostitution. Now, Poland is considered to be quite a conservative country, but of course we had what was called the Black Marches, which were protests that erupted when the Constitutional Court decided to tighten abortion laws. And women went out on the streets and they chose a red symbol of lightning as their symbol. And they also chose a clothes hanger because it is associated with illegal abortion. So they would march in the street with these clothes hangers. And when you go on Facebook, I can see all the profiles that have this lightning symbol on, which is interesting because in Poland, most abortions happen because the child is going to be born with Down syndrome. So these are a couple, maybe 1,000 cases a year. All other cases, like rape, for example, it's maybe 2 a year, sometimes 0. So this is really not an issue. Most children are aborted because they're going to be born disabled. So these protests were really about being able to abort disabled fetuses. And you know we have an election campaign right now in Poland. And the argument that is very often coming up, because the Polish birth rate has plummeted to 1.16%, which is the lowest since 1989. And the argument is being made by the left-wing candidates that were, now we have only 2 left, but for the first round, is that women don't have children in Poland because they can't have an abortion. From a logical point of view, it makes no sense. But this is the argument that they're using. So we have a couple of thousand abortions a year, and what they actually want is to have abortions on demand. And during the campaign, we had a very shocking case of a woman who was about to give birth to a child which was supposed to be genetically, have a genetic illness, and an illness that is treatable. An illness, I had a friend at school who had this illness, and he's still alive. He's a professor of physics in Germany. And there was an offer of a different hospital that she can give birth to that child, and they're going to treat it and help her. But abortion activists caught up with this woman, and in the hospital she was actually staying at, the doctor is an abortionist, and they killed the baby in the 9th month of pregnancy with an injection into the heart of the fetus. And at that occasion it came out that they are doing this regularly. So we have late-term abortions in Poland because the current government of Donald Tusk allowed it. They opened up a back door saying if you have a psychiatrist can attest that you don't feel well, you can abort your child even to the end of pregnancy. So this is what happened. It caused a great stir. But the fact is that no, women are not having children because they can't have abortions. And here I don't agree also with the money argument. Over the 8 years of the Law and Justice government, many studies have been conducted why Polish women don't have children. And it turned out that it has nothing to do with money and with financial strain. The Law and Justice introduced many programs for families, many financial support, 500 zloty per month, then it was up to 800 zloty per child. And still the birth rate went down. So the studies that had been conducted have shown that women don't have children because the attitude towards life has changed. And that is a cultural thing. It goes a lot deeper. In the 1990s, when Poland was still quite a poor country, financial aid helped with the birth rate. But these programs don't work anymore. And they don't work anymore because for most women today, life is a collection of experiences. You go through life collecting events, collecting experiences. It's the Instagram life. You travel, you go here, you go there, and you collect all these impressions. Life is a collection of impressions. If you don't have a collection of you do not live. And children just don't allow you for that. They're treated and seen, viewed by women in Poland, I'm not going to enlarge this to the whole of Europe, but in Poland, as an obstacle to personal development, to personal happiness. And this is something that goes a lot deeper than just pro-family policies. I don't think that they could fix that, and we can see that they don't. In Poland, for the 8 years of the Law and Justice government, it hasn't worked. The attitudes of women towards life. Well, that is the first thing. The second thing is that the situation of women has changed. So today, it's true that women vote more to the left, and men more and more, especially young men of Gen Z, to the right. But that is because the gender pay gap has reversed also. Women today earn more than men in many instances, especially in the lower middle classes. If you look at the electorate of Donald Trump, and also in Poland, if you look at who votes for the right-wing Konfederacja of Mr. Sławomir Mencen, you see that those are young men that are stuck in small towns, while the women, they travel to Warsaw, to the big towns, and are making big careers. And these young men are frustrated because they can't find a wife, because all the women have left. And they're making big careers, they're making big money in the big cities, and they are stuck alone in these small towns. The gender pay gap has reversed. Today, women are faring much better than men in education, at university, in schools, everywhere. Men are at a disadvantage. Women vote to the left because it is in their interest. Because these policies serve them, and they don't serve men. So this is, I think, the reason, and the fact that today we really have a cultural change. A cultural change is extremely deep. The left went through all the institutions. I called it the long march through the institutions, and it worked, it happened. And they capered culture. And this is all a deep cultural issue, and I don't think it will be, I'm sorry to discourage you, very easy to fix unless women understand that it's not in their interest. And every, objective fact points that it is in their interest to actually vote left, then we won't be able to do much about it. Now, to give you a glimmer of hope, the first round of Polish presidential elections, Mr. Trzaskowski got about 33% of the female vote, but Mr. Nawrocki got 30%, so the difference isn't that large. And then you have Mr. Manson, who astoundingly got 10% of women to vote for him, which is a lot when you take into account that he said that even rape shouldn't be a reason to have an abortion. So it's not that bad. I think we can operate a shift, but it will take time. I don't think it's going to happen quickly. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We're going to dive deeper. Barbara Bonte, please.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me here. So I will speak especially about women in conservative politics, because I'm a politician of a right-wing conservative party in Flanders, Vlaams Belang. So about women in conservative politics, there are two questions that are often raised. First one is, why are there relatively few women leaders in conservative movements? And more importantly, and that's the second question, why do so few young women feel attracted to conservative ideas? So let me begin with the second question, because the answer to the first naturally follows from it. So recent polls show a sharp ideological gap between men and women under 30. In the US, you had the research agency Gallup, and Gallup reports that young women are up to 30 percentage points more liberal than their male peers. And we see similar trends visible also in Europe, because, for example, you had the German elections, and the German elections showed that young women vote 30% more left than men. So there's a big gap between the two. What can be the explanation of it? According to me, I think it's because our society is fundamentally liberal. The most important goals for young people in our society are independence, autonomy, and financial success. The good life today means master's degree, big paycheck, an apartment in the city, several trips a year to the other side of the world, etc. So in this system, a successful woman is by definition liberal, because success is defined in liberal terms. A more conservative woman, who marries young, prioritizes family, scales down her career ambitions to focus on motherhood or on community life, she is not longer seen in our society as successful. She's invisible and sometimes even ridiculed. The system doesn't reward her. So leftist feminism want to turn women into men, but staying voluntarily childless, by all means necessary, doesn't free women. It alienates them from their own potential. So if women want to become successful in our society, so they have to act liberal, and often their political values will reflect their personal choices. It's not because they hate tradition, I think, but it's because tradition has been coded as failure. So the issue isn't that women are naturally less conservative. The issue is that cultural and economic system make conservative choices invisible, unrewarded, and costly, especially for women. And here I can relate to these hard questions myself. I have also chosen 10 years ago to quit politics to be able to raise my children. They were newborns, and it was for me very important to raise them myself. And honestly, I felt very lucky to be able to do this because I had the full support of my husband. And yeah, saw my children growing up, and I was able to give them nurture, so I was very happy to do this. And then, yeah, 10 years later, I came back. I chose to go back to politics, and I'm very grateful to my political party, Vlaams Belang, the conservative political party, to give me that opportunity to return through the big gates. So I'm very grateful to even being able to make this choice, because today it's not possible for the vast majority of the women. It's very difficult for them, and many of us decide not to have children out of economic and financial considerations. The majority of mothers do not even have the possibility to choose for the rearing of the children, because in many cases 2 incomes are barely enough to pay the bills at home. So I'm convinced that we can have many more female conservatives, but we have to rebuild a society that values what conservative women actually do. So we must change the system. And I know that sounds a bit like a left-wing slogan, an Antifa slogan, but sometimes even the right must be revolutionary too. We must stop rewarding only one kind of women, the ultra-mobile, career-driven, childless urban consumer. If we want women to live more conservatively, we must make the life possible again. And that means a real policy change. And here are 5 priorities that my party, Vlaams Belang, supports and actively tries to implement. The first thing is to make family life economically viable again. Tax policy, housing, child benefits must support families, not penalize them. And these policies are already implemented in Hungary and also in Sweden, where the state supports family life for young mothers, which is a very good thing. The second is we have to recognize care as a civic contribution. Stay-at-home parenting deserves financial and cultural recognition. We have to value care, not just paid work. And that's why my party proposed a part-time parenting wage for parents who reduce their work to care for young children. And you have Germany, France and Finland that are already using this system, where young mothers can claim a sum of €400 a month for rearing their children. Another point is, we have to reform the education as a moral formation. Schools should not just train future workers, but to shape also future mothers, future fathers, and citizens with character, with tradition, with duty. Schools should teach the caring role of women in society. Then we have to make it easier to work locally, so make it easier for women to stay rooted. Through remote work, we have to support small family businesses and community-based economies. And the last thing is, we also have to think about redefining leadership, because we don't just need more women in power, we need to celebrate the power of women who already serve in homes, in schools, as a teacher, in churches, in communities. And that's the same leadership than leadership in companies. So if we build a society that rewards contribution over consumption, belonging over autonomy, and shared purpose over personal ambition, I think many more women will feel not only welcome in conservative politics, but will also be called to it. Thank you.
So because I really want to open up to the questions from the floor, I was trying to work out how to do it, to ask at least one question. And I had an idea. I thought that actually, Alice, I think you are being attacked because you treat women individually, you listen to their concerns, where the fake anti-fascists, actual fascists outside, they want women to be in their place and follow the line. And I think through your actions, you're actually challenging the status quo and shaking everyone up. First of all, that they have to notice the reality and then deal with it. And based on that observation that I have, then I thought that maybe if each one of you tried in one sentence to say what would be the point for you, how the conservatives can really work out this new way of, what would be the story that could bring everyone closer and challenge the status quo and refocus everyone on what we really have to deal with, and maybe what would be the proposal how to go about it, like in a short way. And then I'm really curious about everyone in the audience. Thank you. Birgit?
So I should start. So to put it in one sentence, I would say we need to promote a feminine way of life and emphasize the difference between men and women.
Excellent, thank you. And Barbara?
I think we have to revalue women who stay at home for taking care of children, because now in society they're often considered as, they are not contributing financially, economically to the society, which is a big mistake.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you. Alexandra?
I think we have to convince women that they are not acting in their own interest by going with the left. Many are left alone without families. They can't form relationships. I mean, this has become a really, really urgent societal issue, so I think we have to convince them. It's not in their interest, contrary to what they believe.
Mm-hmm. And Alice, would you like to add anything?
Yes, perhaps I think it's important that women, they see the reality, but a lot of people see, no, it's not the reality that you live. And
there's no Me Too movement following and helping you?
And, no, Me Too.
Believe all women?
Me Too is only for when the rapist is white. And famous. And famous. And this is a problem. And so I think you see the reality is true. And so today, left people can't answer to this problem.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I'm really curious about questions from the floor. If you have any questions, comments, raise your hand up. I will take few at the time. And then I will allow the speakers to address the questions that they choose. Looks like everyone is still processing. Oh, excellent. So I have a lady in the second row, and then later on there would be a gentleman in the front. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much. My question is, how would conservative men, who often perhaps like the idea that their wife will stay at home and raise the family, how is it possible for them to find a different way of thinking, to think that a woman can have children and can also be active in an economically viable way outside of the home? I mean, how does the conservative man's attitude change, if it needs to be changed? But I think a lot of conservative men, and I'm not judging that, would like to be in a home where they can be the breadwinner and have a wife at home.
Thank you, very valid point. And a question in the front from the gentleman, please.
Thank you. Well, comparing, for example, Hungary, where I've seen, I was having a speech in a university in Hungary, and there were a lot of young students with their small children, 1 or 2 years old, and that was perfectly normal. There were spaces in the university for the children to play, and it was absolutely normal and accepted that they were there. In Italy or in France or in Western Europe in general, it seems to me that motherhood has become a guilt, a shame. There is no tolerance, no welcoming for children in public spaces. So I wanted to ask if you share this impression, and in case, what can be done to affirm that women have the right to have careers, but they have a right to have children as well. And children are not aliens. They are part of the society, and they should have a place also in public space. Maybe if I can add, if we had more children and less illegals in our squares and in our streets, it will be safer for everybody.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? There is a hand at the back I can see on the... Oh, I'm sorry, because the lights. So one there, and then here the gentleman closer to the pillar. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. My question is, you can see online that more and more women promote more traditionalism. There's a movement actually called Tradwife movement. Do you think there's been a shift with women that they want to become more traditional today than a couple of years ago?
Thank you. And the gentleman is on this side. Where is the second microphone? Because I don't see it. I'm sorry, because the lights are really bright. Thank you.
Thank you for your intervention. My question is for Member of Parliament. If I have understood your party's position correctly, you are talking about giving an allowance to stay-home mother and help new mother of societies. But when we see the currently sociology of societies, I have a question. The risk is for it maybe family of from communalist and immigrant background and confining the woman in more Islamic communities because you have a lot of women are comment expliquer ça en anglais? More stay confined by men and Islamic values in the house and give allowance to this woman. It's not a way to more confine the women in the societies. I don't know if you understand, but
Yes, we
okay,
understand.
thank you.
So I think we can come back to the stage. Yes, Brigitte?
Yes, I want to go on your question because I think we need not to change men. I think we need to change the mindset also of women, and we need to change our wording. You know, you also used, and I think you both used the phrase "stay-at-home women." You know, I wrote a whole book about motherhood, and I also always instruct mothers not to speak about staying at home. You know, this is not what they are doing. If you ask a man what is he doing, he will tell you his profession and what he's doing the whole day. And if you ask a woman raising children, she answers, "I'm staying at home." So this is, and I always ask, what are you doing at home? Are you just staying there and doing nothing? So we ourselves as women, we put down what mothers are doing at home. So the difference in wording would be that we are raising our children on our own. You know, we don't give them to the state, and this is work. This is hard work. This is 24 hours, 7 days a week. So this is what mothers are doing at home. And you asked if we shouldn't change men, because a lot of men still like to have a woman as a housewife at home to raise the children. I can tell you a lot of women also prefer this life and this way of life. And my point is, we need those women. We need them at least for 10 years, like you did, like myself I did. You know, I raised 4 children. Yes, we can have it all in life. And we need to have it all to be financially secure. But we need to secure that women can do this now in the modern lifestyle, one after the other. So what the left-wing feminism tells us, you can have it all, but you have to do it at the same time. And I propose, yes, you can have it all, and you should do it all. You should be a mother, and you should go to work, and you need a good education, but You cannot succeed by doing it at the same time. So you will collapse, or your family will collapse, your marriage will collapse, or your career will collapse. We cannot do it at the same time, and we only ask this from women, but not from men. We only ask to do it at the same time from women, so this is not fair. So if we want to change something, and to have an own conservative proposal, we need to find solutions how to live motherhood in modern times without taking all the risk of this and not divide the risk with men. And we see that politics is just emphasizing on one lifestyle. You know, we support daycare, public daycare, with a lot of tax money in most Western societies. In Germany, very strong. In Germany, every daycare, every child is supported by about 1,200 euros every month. This is just the part the state gives for one daycare place every month for every child. But they give only 300 euros for 3 years if you raise your child on your own. So why? So the problem is not money, it's the mindset. They just don't want us to do this. This is socialism, this is communism. They want society to raise the children and not to do it. And this is also a thing about freedom. So I think we need to change our own mindset, but we also need to change our wording and don't sell ourselves as women and as mothers under worth.
Thank you, Alice.
Yes, I have a little advice perhaps for conservative men. You have extremists in feminism and you have extremists too in machism. So if I have an advice is for men, conservative men, don't listen Andrew Tate, listen Saint-Exupéry. If you want to know what is a man today, listen Saint-Exupéry and not Andrew Tate.
Thank you. Alexandra?
Yeah, I know. Maybe I will address your question because you said about bringing children to university. Well, you know, all of this exists. Over the last couple of decades, we've made a huge leap forward in childcare. We have more than enough. In Poland, there's a lack actually of children to put them into daycare. So there's, because people don't have children, so the problem is rather that the daycares are empty than that they are lacking. So the issues we've made enormous leaps forward. Women are helped in many, many ways when they have children. In many big companies offer daycare. All of this has been more or less resolved, and still there are no children. So I'm coming back to my original point. It has nothing to do with daycare. It has nothing to do with financial issues. Not in Western society. There's more than enough money for families. That's why all the Muslims are coming. Huh? They have 11 children and they live like kings. This is not the issue. Women don't want to have children. And if you look at social media, it's enough, spend a day on social media, you'll find out why. That this is not the issue. Because my figure will change and I will not look like I did before the pregnancy. And hundreds of women putting photographs and films online, how I got back into my perfect body. This is being promoted. You will destroy your body if you have a child. And then you have the second facet, which is your life is going to be ruined, absolutely ruined. I read you the headlines from the liberal newspaper in Poland. It's telling women that you will never experience anything. Your life is over for the next 20 years. You have a big lump that is tied to your leg and that you cannot get rid of. And you have whole forums like Reddit, where when women write, I'm looking for childcare, somebody take care of my child because I want to go to the cinema. You have 100 comments there. You idiot, you wanted that child yourself, and now you can't go to the cinema, ha 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 ha. You know, it's a cultural, a deep issue that is not going to go away with childcare, and it didn't. We have enough childcare in Poland. We have literally places where they can't find enough clients, enough children. The birth rate is constantly falling. And it doesn't matter how many more such childcare possibilities you're going to open up. We have to address the deeper issue that today what is also promoted, and interestingly, what was actually promoted by feminists in the 1970s, by the most radical ones, surrogacy, actually hiring a belly so that you can stay, most Hollywood stars do it now, to stay, always stay beautiful and slim. So you hire people to give birth for you. That was advocated in the 1970s as the model of the future. And, well, here we are. It actually arrived. So today we have surrogacy, we have talking about artificial wombs. This is the direction in which we are going. And the one-child model, that young people, and I know that also from my own family, when I have one child, and I ask, why don't you have another one? No, we're going to concentrate on this one child, and this one child is getting all the resources. And they want to have the perfect child, because this is also another faucet. Having the perfect child. I would look at it more from that aspect.
Barbara?
About having children? Yeah, no.
Maybe there was a question.
Sorry.
Political. There was a question related to politics.
About the allowances?
Yes. Whether that's not going to endanger women's rights when it comes to different cultures and
when it's not going to immigrants, all those allowances.
But it's more related about the women's rights and whether this is not going to endanger them with the allowances, that it will kind of more keep them away from the culture of the country where they live now.
No, I don't think so, because the allowances will give the opportunity to women to stay home for a while, but then to return back. But I think that in that regard, I think companies can still do a lot of effort. So when you quit your job, when you leave your career for taking care of the children, when you have the allowance, then you want to come back to the company. Yeah, it's very difficult. I don't have to tell you. I was lucky because I am in a political party who is conservative, who wanted me back, and I was so happy to be able to return. But most women cannot. When you quit your career for 10 years, it's very difficult to return, and I think companies should work about it.
I don't agree on this point, you know? I think that politics, they don't want us to skip for 10 years, so they scare women that you cannot come back. But you know, in Germany, our biggest problem is that we need skilled workers in the working spaces. So, and they tell us every illegal immigrant from Syria, without even speaking German, can be integrated into the German labor market. But when I studied women and I'm skipping for 3 years to raise a child, then they tell me I'm not, there is no job left for me, you know. This is just insane. So it's just not true. But we need those women on the labor market, but they scare women. So they, we have this brainwash now for 20 years or 30 years, and it worked out. Young women are scared. So they don't risk to stay apart, but I'm completely convinced that they could come back in the working space.
I was sorry. I was talking about my personal situation, working at a political party. So that was my personal situation. But I agree with you. Of course, in companies there is still a lot of work to do.
We have more questions. Let's come back to the floor because I can see burning questions. So there is a lady in a green dress, Anne. And then afterwards behind Bill, and then Maren.
I think there's a lot of sense that's been spoken on the platform about the demonization of having children and having, particularly having a large family, and this notion that if you have children as a woman, your life ends, I think is very, very prevalent. And it's something that we really have to take up and give examples of how that need not happen. But I think it's difficult. I'm a 65-year-old woman. If I could be giving advice to young people, it would probably be have your children early right? Have your children early and understand that the skills that you can gain from having children are completely transferable to the workplace, in the sense that if you can look after a couple of children, you can definitely deal with a boardroom full of men, because their attitudes are often very the same. However, what I think is really hard, and this is a genuine problem that I don't know how to address, is that for me, the most attractive thing about conservatism, and what has really pulled me to more conservative organizations, is its commitment to personal responsibility for your actions and individual freedom from the state, and the right to act according to our own conscience. So that's what's pulled me towards conservatism. But often when I hear conservatives talking about women, what they're talking about is taking away their individual responsibility to deal with things such as their fertility. And it's about saying what we don't think that women should be able to do, and then looking to the state to intervene, to provide things like childcare, to support them. So what I'd like to know is how we genuinely deal with the problems that women face on a day-to-day basis, which is dealing with the problems of having children, while at the same time 100% maintaining the conservative values of freedom and liberation and conscience, individual conscience, which I think we should have. How do we do that? I think it's really hard.
Thank you. And Bill, behind.
Yeah, I'm Bill Dorodia, visiting professor to MCC and a recovering father of 3. I was just wondering if there's a bit of a false polarization amongst some of the comments on the platform, because what I heard was people saying women have been presented with a liberal model, that it's all about you, and there's these caricatures of how you should be, and we should counterpose it with a more social conscience. And I'm not sure I see it that way, because, you know, whenever I look at a collective or a community, it's only healthy and strong if it's made up of healthy and strong individuals. And at the same time, you only get strong individuals if the community supports them. And so, in other words, rather than counterpose the individual to society, I think they're much more intricately linked. And indeed, we use the terms in a confusing way at times. I mean, Anne was in front of me just now pointing out that she likes the kind of focus on the individual in conservatism rather than the focus on the social. And of course, it's the left today, to some extent. They'll say they present themselves as having more of a social conscience rather than focusing on the individual. So I think the language doesn't help. I think the left and the right are not that clear as to what it is that they're saying. And I think the real fundamental problem that we have is that we have both weak individuals and weak communities. I had a student of mine do a project on why women in China are not having children, just to confirm the point that it's nothing to do with money. And it's actually really deep down, it's about a crisis of commitment to society, not just to men who are going to run away, but actually to a vision of the future that they don't feel society is presenting them with.
Thank you, Maren, at the back. And then there's a lady here in the first row.
Thank you all for your wonderful and very different comments. I must say I agree with Alexandra. There is, you know, or Bill, there is no money incentive that would make many more women become mothers. You know, there is, you know, the discussion about just give women the opportunity and the payment and the chances, they will choose to be mothers. But what I have discovered with me, my social circle, over everywhere, is that the more free women are, the less they want to be mothers. Some do, and a lot don't. So for me, what Alexandra talks about, she talks about it in a way that sounds nightmarish. I find it quite positive. So the idea of, it's for me, not having a family or not having children is got nothing to do with what Bill says, no commitment to society. I don't think so. It's not a fear of the future or fear of the environment. It's basically, for me, it is an expression of my own freedom. And that is very weird for people to get their heads around, especially sort of traditional thinking people. And I've had a friend who was very much like me, and she was also asked, why don't you have children? Why don't you have a family? And she says, yeah, no, I don't want to bring them up in this terrible world. And I said, really? No, later on when we were together, I said, really, do you think this? She says, no, but this is the only answer that people accept. Nobody will accept that you just want to be free from these kind of obligations that you are being put upon because you're a woman. I have very, very much, very engaged in social life. I'm engaged in the future, but I don't want my freedom curbed because I am a woman.
Thank you. There's a lady at the front.
Hi, good evening. So in a time where femininity is often reduced to personal choice, self-identity or self-expression, conservative women tend to defend a vision of womanhood rooted in dignity, community and social order. Now, my question is, how can we give voice to this richer, maybe less fashionable ideal in a society that's so focused on individualistic self-fulfillment? Thank you.
Thank you. Quite big question. Would you like to come back to us, or shall we take more questions? Because it's quite yes. Okay, yes. I think we should come back, and then please remember your questions for later.
I'd like to answer you. I don't know your name. I think you're right. The problem is how can we define the right way by avoiding also to just tell them what the right way is. You know, you mentioned I'm president of a women's NGO called Women, Family, Freedom. You know, I think we need to focus on the freedom. It is not to promote now the traditional way of life. You know, I lived myself for many years a traditional way of life and raised 4 children. You know, I'm not on a mission. You know, this is not the single and the right way to live as a woman. So we are promoting the autonomy of family and women. And I think we should stop, you know, a lot of, with more women's politics and more family politics. I think we should reduce this because, you know, normally in the political area, we say, oh, we need more daycare, we need more support here, let's give more money over here. I think we should reduce it and give freedom to families, freedom to really, and not to support one special way of life. And the answer why so many poor people get so many children in all Western societies is because we support with tax money this way of life, and we take away their self-responsibility also to raise their children on their own. So we encourage them to give them to the state, to daycare, because this is financially supported in society. So we give them a direction. I think we should take away the direction and leave it to women. and to the families. And yes, so to the lady in the back, there are women who say, I don't want children, and this is okay. You know, if you don't want to have children, then it's better to have no children, not only for you, but also for your children. But if you know, we every year in Germany and in whole Europe, we have polls. What does the youth want? What does young women want? I remember a poll in Austria from the social minister. They asked young women about the way of life they want to have later, and half of the young women answered they would like to live as a housewife and raise the children if the man earns enough of money. So, and you know, the whole feminism was collapsing, but you know, this is when you ask them, but they don't realize, they don't get to realize this way of life because they are not supported in this. We have polls in Germany every year, to youth polls. What do young people want in their life? Number one, and you know this does not change, is getting married and having children. So this is still in their minds. So you know, we are lacking a lot of young people still want family. Young women still want children, but they are not encouraged. And my point from my statement at the beginning, not even conservatives encourage them. You know, you write it down in your party programs, but you know, I could not name in Germany a single MP from the Christian Democrats, and also no female MP that is going out in public and is promoting having children, having family, having marriage. You know, so we write it down on papers and put it down in the desk. But you know, there is no conservative movement promoted.
She has many children, 7, yeah?
Yeah, and she promoted daycare.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
With her 7
you
children.
know,
Yeah.
the conservative Christian Democratic von der Leyen family minister in Germany promoted daycare for everybody. And she said also that children are getting dumped at home. You know, they need this education in daycare.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, if I may make a comment about it. So we have the president of the Flemish Socialists, and he wanted to oblige daycare to children since they are born.
The socialists want this too.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if you let this happen, then the indoctrination of the children can start from the very beginning.
Yes, but my question is, where are the conservatives then taking the debate in public that they are wrong? So I don't see them in Germany.
We try to do it.
Well, I wanted to get into a dispute with you because I'm very doubtful that you can really make a free decision when you are so strongly influenced by the culture you live in. You know, in today's societies, families with 5 children are treated like they're pathological. There were studies done in Poland that this is actually the case. So if you have 5 children, people look at you as if there was something wrong with you. First of all, you're backward. Second of all, you don't know how to use contraception. So you're some kind of, you know, escapee from the Middle Ages, and how did you make it so far? The way, what I just said before, the attitude is towards motherhood, it's not it can't be a really free decision. You're influenced by the culture you live in. So your decision is not free. It's not entirely free. It's influenced. And that is the problem, that women think they're making this decision completely freely, but in reality they're not. Because somewhere in the back of their head, all these arguments, why the child is going to destroy your life, they are there. And that's why you decide not to have it. So freedom has nothing to do with it. It's not free. And this is we live in a context, and this context has a very strong influence on us. And when I was researching a little bit for this debate, I found actually studies that show that the problem probably is going to solve itself very soon, because the level of testosterone in men has been falling consistently since the 1970s, a couple of percentage points every year, since the 1970s when women's liberation began, and gender roles started to change and to reverse. So men's testosterone levels today are the same of 85-year-olds in 1945, okay? So that was the first thing. Second thing is sperm counts are dropping in the same manner for the last couple of decades. So it seems that societal reality has an impact on biology. And we will arrive at some point in the future where there will be still people left who will want to have children, but it won't be possible because this is the direction in which we are going. And today, the biggest problem is not abortion. The biggest problem is IVF treatments and the access to them, and for them to be free, and best of all, the state pays for them. Because women, they say, oh, it's my free decision, I don't want to have children. Oh my God, I'm 45, I want to have children. And that's when the IVF comes in. And we had cases in Poland of abortions where women had 5 pregnancies through IVF, and everyone was Down syndrome. And they aborted them all. And suddenly they wake up with their free decision and their complete freedom at 45 and say, I want the perfect baby. But it doesn't work out that way. So you have to look at all these aspects. In my opinion, there's no freedom involved in this at all. Quite on the contrary. And that's just what I wanted to say.
Alice just wanted to address something
Yes,
shortly,
I
and then
think
we'll go back to the floor. And also, when you will listen to the questions and comments, think of your kind of final comments, because we're coming to a close. Thank you.
I agree with the part of what you say, because I think some young women don't want baby because they don't know the fact it's possible to have baby in this world. And one girl speak about the trad wife on internet. The impact of trad wife, in fact, it's not trad wife, they are businesswomen, but it's another debate. I think trad wife doesn't exist for the new generation. I think the new generation of women want to have baby for the women who know the possibilities to have baby, and the new generation who are going in the left wings, they are going in the left wings too, because they don't know if it's possible, and they don't know the beauty of the family, but they want to have a career too. I'm a conservative woman, I have a career, and I want baby, and I don't want to stop my career. And I think it's different with the new generation too. They don't want to stop their career, and I think the conservative people win the day they will find the solutions to have a career and to have baby. For example, I create an association with 5 other girls, and I think in 2 years I will have babies. Another girls in my association will have babies, and we are a career, we are salaries of our association, and we create another way. We would like to have in our building where we are working a space where a babysitter will be all the time with our baby, and I will see the baby, my baby, all the time, but I don't stop my career. And I think it's the answer for the new generations. For me, trad wife doesn't exist reality.
They look good with their 1950s dresses.
Great. Frank.
Special.
Yes, it's coming.
So I disagree a little bit with Alexandra on freedom, because your argument is the same as what the left used to argue, that the working class is influenced by all these cultural things, and therefore they cannot act at all freely, because as Marx said, they have false consciousness. You know, they basically are too stupid to be able to know what is in their own interest. And I think that you're right to suggest that culture is very important. But there are people who are nevertheless able to understand that their freedom is so important. And we see that the reason why we have so many populist party is doing so well in Europe is because people have not listened to that culture. They're rebelling against it. I think the point that Barbara made about having to have a revolution is really, really quite important for us, because we have to somehow find a way of minimizing those kind of cultural influences. I think that, to me, the really important challenge is the one that Alice made about how we seduce people to become conservatives. As an individual, I have a very bad record in seducing anybody. But nevertheless, it is a question of how do we manage to make conservatism attractive to people? How do we make it seem to kind of come alive? Because we can do something about that, but we cannot do much about culture. Culture cannot be changed by an act of will, but conservatism can change its spots, can change itself. And I think there are many things we can do. For example, at MCC Brussels, I'm always pushing to have more women speakers, so that the speakers are not just, I go to conferences, and they're all men. It's like, it's like a gay club, sort of where kind of, I mean, I'm not against that at all, but I would like to see a woman now and again, sort of, I mean, every single platform. So that's not very sexy. That's not very attractive to somebody. If you're a young woman interested in political life, and you see it's just all men, it's not going to work all that well. Secondly, we need to provide more opportunities for women to be in leadership position. It's very, very important that women are just not simply making the coffee and the tea, but they are encouraged, sort of, we go out of our way to encourage them to do media work, to speak about politics in public life, to really make sure that they are the voice of us rather than just simply men. I think that a lot could be gained by podcasts, by the media, making sure that women play a full role in relation to that. Thirdly, I think that conservatives need to trust women. One of the things that I don't like about old-fashioned conservatives is they always lecture women on what they should do. They have a very strong opinion that this is what a woman ought to be like. And I think that conservative women have got to discover for themselves how to present a feminine type of conservatism, what it means for women in the 21st century. And that means that we need to almost shake out our head a little bit and get the old crap out of our system in order to begin to move forward in a new direction. Because I do think that Alice's point about the fact that we need to have it all, if you want to use that expression, which I hate, but nevertheless allow women or create a situation where women can have a career and children is really the goal that we should be aspiring for. And that's, if you can begin to even get close to that goal, I think that conservatism will become a richer, a more kind of dynamic force than it is at the moment. So I look forward to the day when I go to a big conservative conference and men are the minority.
Thank you, Frank. I'm conscious of time, so I think it would be best actually that now you respond. And shall we do it in the reverse order? So Barbara, if you start, then Alexandra, Birgit and Alice last. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it's sometimes hard for a lot of women to make a choice between their career and between a family. So I think we should facilitate this, and that was why we propose the wage for a woman who stays at home is maybe the wrong word, but who works at home and who takes care of the children. I think it's important to find a good work-life balance, and I think the balance is now most towards work. It has to more in balance, like the word said itself, in balance with your life, with your family. So that's the reason why we are proposing this, and I think it's a very strong proposal, and it can help a lot of women, I think, to choose for the family. In my friends' circle, I have really talked to a lot of friends, and it's very special because they are all making career. They are all you're a bit younger than I. They are beginning 30, and they don't want to have children because you're very afraid to lose their careers. So and they are begging me, please do something about it, and I think it can be a solution.
Thank you. Alexandra?
Well, in answer to what you said, I think there's still a pressure to conformity and to do what is fashionable. And it is fashionable not to have children for women, quite quite very much. I know a lot of women who have both children and careers, but I also know more and more women who don't want to have children because they are influenced by the perfect life that they see on Instagram and elsewhere, and that they also want to pursue. So yes, people can make informed decisions, and of course they can decide freely. I do, many other women certainly do too. But there is, as we know, a certain group that is going after what is fashionable, what is trendy. And I'm afraid it does influence people's decisions either way. And for me, the whole work-life balance obsession is another thing that actually scares women, because we always talk about work-life balance, and there's a sort of pressure to manage to do that. We even have a congress in Poland called Work-Life Balance Congress, and there's even people from esoteric, with crystals and stuff like that. There's everything there. You pay 6,000 zloty to participate. It's a lot of money, and they have thousands of participants, and mostly they're women. So women go to this congress to try and find the holy grail of work-life balance. And it's such an obsession, and it's such a thing that, forces you. I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect work-life balance. I don't think we should strive towards things like these. As women, I don't think we should, be pressured to do this, because it's a very individual thing that can be worked out for each woman in her own way. And to me, that's an obsession that's unhealthy.
Thank you. Birgit?
Oh, yes. I think we need to change our strategy how to speak up in public as conservatives. Because when it comes to women's issues and family issues, we are now for many decades just on defense, in a defense mode. So we just defend, but we never promote. The other way we do is we copy. We copy what the lefts do, and we are doing this also a little bit and this a little bit, but there is no vision. There is no vision, there is no promotion of a unique conservative vision of how to be a woman in the 21st century. So, and as long as we do not speak up, the only, and I'm a little bit with Alexandra, that there is, all young women here is don't do this. And not even conservative voices, or not enough, I'm trying this now for 15 years, speak up and give another opinion in the political discourse. So if we do not speak up on this, conservatives always focus mostly, even in parties, on the hard topics, economy and foreign defense and stuff like this. And we left the social engineering to the lefts and to the Greens, and they took over, and now they have the zeitgeist. So, and we need to get this back. And so we need to speak up. So I would just encourage everybody to speak up about your vision of a good life as a woman or as a family, and we need to stop to to go against men, because what we see is not only that we have no vision on how to be a woman, but we also don't speak up in how to be a man. So and we have this public discourse about everything that with testosterone is a toxic masculinity, and where are the conservatives speaking up against this? So as long as we don't speak up, nothing will change.
Thank you. Alice?
I think it's important today to create symbol of women who are very happy when they have baby, and sorry, but who are very happy too in their work. And I think it's very important, because if you want to seduce the new generation of women, I think want to work, or not all the women, but a lot of the women want to work, and they are afraid to have baby because they are afraid to imagine that can stop their career. And I think we have to create solution and to create example. The obligations, I think it's not very the better to create the seduction. To create the seduction is to create example of women who are happy in their life, in their career, in their family. And I think it's the key.
Thank you very much to the speakers. Thank you for coming and speaking. I think it was a great beginning of the conversation on this subject, and I do hope we're going to continue. Thank you.